Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. The countdown is here. This Thursday, we finally have football. Chiefs, Texans, a great opener. Deshaun Watson got a big extension. Patrick Mahomes got a big extension. Mitch Trubisky does not have a big extension. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit. But man, I'm so excited. I am so excited. I cannot believe that football is actually going to be here. I've talked about it before for a while. I really wasn't sure we were going to get football. For a while, it started to seem like, man, just the possibility of it, the chances of it, how did the logistics work? It seemed like football wasn't going to happen, and thankfully it is. Thankfully, our sports have handled COVID better than the country has as a whole, and they've followed the safety protocols, and it's been working out. And now we're going to get football. And even though there's not going to necessarily be the same kind of crowd sizes and everything, it still will be fun to see some of the fans there. I'm interested to see how that all works out, if there's any breakouts, if how long the league continues to do it. Do they up the amount of people who can attend the stadiums as the season goes on? There's a lot of questions there. But all in all, I'm excited, and I cannot wait to be able to sit down with my family and watch some football. Take some notes, talk about it with you guys, talk about what I saw, give my opinion on certain things. I can't wait to see how the season looks because, you know, the NBA, they set the bar high. They really, really did set that bar high when it comes to how this product should look and everything. I'm excited to see that, and I'm really, really hoping for a clean season, right? I'm hoping that there doesn't have to be a stoppage because there's a massive outbreak. I'm hoping a team doesn't basically come down with everyone having COVID. I'm hoping it doesn't happen. For selfish reasons, I want football back, and I think most fans can admit that. It is a selfish reason. Why do we want football back? Because it's a great game. It's the greatest game in the world, in my opinion. And it's just so much fun to watch. The stories, the on-the-field action, the special plays, the special moments. I want to see it all. So I cannot wait to see the Chiefs and the Texans. I can't wait to see Deshaun Watson and Mahomes go head-to-head. Andy Reid and Bill O'Brien. See how this new Texans roster looks. See how the Chiefs come out after a Super Bowl victory. I just cannot wait. But anyways, we got some stuff to get into today. I want to talk about the Bears and Mitch Trubisky, because they fumbled one quarterback situation, and I think they fumbled another. I want to get into Leonard Fournette going to Tampa. A lot of people are super high on this move. I have some thoughts about it. I'm going to get into that. I want to talk about some Jadeveon Clowney. And then lastly, I got another list for you guys. I want to give you my top 5 losses to injury this offseason. Luckily for teams, there's no preseason because there's usually off-season injuries. And then once the preseason begins, then we have preseason injuries. We've had some pretty notable ones in recent memory. Tony Romo got hurt. Julian Edelman, he got hurt, missed a whole season. It just kind of happens. And they're freak injuries. You always hate them. Odell Beckham, his knee almost got destroyed in the preseason game against the Browns. So luckily this season, there's no preseason injuries, but we're just going to focus on the off-season in general. But anyways, so the Bears have come out and they have announced that Mitch Trubisky is going to be the starter of the Bears going into the season. And I think that is ridiculous. Now, I have seen some quotes coming out during Bears camp. I think Cordarrelle Patterson came out and he said that he liked the fire in Mitch's eyes. It seemed like he had, he just had this new determination. He really wanted to prove himself. That's great. The Bears, they made a move this offseason to go ahead and trade for Nick Foles. Now, Nick Foles has got to be one of the most interesting stories in the NFL, in my opinion. I don't understand Nick Foles. I really don't. He had that one spectacular year in Philadelphia where he threw like 27 touchdowns to 2 picks. He threw 7 touchdowns in one of the games, which tied an NFL record. He played outstanding. He then goes to the Rams, doesn't really do anything. We have all kind of come to the conclusion that was Jeff Fisher's fault because everyone with Jeff Fisher seemed to be terrible. Jared Goff looked like a flat out bust with Jeff Fisher. Sean McVay goes there. Jared Goff actually looks like he can play. Then he goes, he mulls retirement. He goes to the Chiefs for a year, kind of gets that fun football back in his life. Then he goes to Philadelphia to be a backup. The 2018 playoffs come around, Carson Wentz gets hurt, Nick Foles finishes out the season, goes into the playoffs, and then has one of the greatest postseason runs of all time. I mean, it was Eli Manning, Joe Flacco-esque. He was nearly flawless in the playoffs, and then he outgunned Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl to not only win the Super Bowl, but win Super Bowl MVP. This dude, he ends up getting kind of an extension with the Eagles, or I think they just gave him more money, and he's the backup there another year. Carson Wentz again gets hurt. He once again saves the Eagles season, takes them into the playoffs, beats the Bears, beats that vaunted Bears defense, and then, yes, they ended up losing the next week, but nonetheless, Nick Foles, he really showed, he was, if anything, he's a big game player. He then goes to Jacksonville on a big contract. He gets hurt week 1. He then can't beat out Gardner Minshew to get the job back. He then gets traded to the Bears in exchange for I think like a 4th round pick. Now, why did they make the trade for Nick Foles? It wasn't just to put pressure on Mitch Trubisky. It was the end goal was to be able to bench Mitch Trubisky. The end goal was for Nick Foles to be able to beat them out. Now, the Bears have consistently tried to double and triple down on Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback, saying he's their guy, he's their guy, he's their guy. Remember, before they traded for Nick Foles, they said Mitch is their guy. Mitch is going to be the starter going into next season. They believe in Mitch. They want to give him another chance. And then they went and they traded for Nick Foles. Now, at the time that they traded for Nick Foles, there were a few other options on the table. They could have traded for Cam Newton. They could have attempted to sign Jameis Winston. They could have attempted, I think Andy Dalton was free at the time. They could have tried to trade for Andy Dalton, or maybe, just wait and see if he was going to become a free agent, whatever it was. Nick Foles, I do not believe any other team would have made a trade for him. I just simply don't believe it. I think the Bears had the opportunity to wait. But before we really do get into that, the reason why it is that they traded for Foles was to beat out Trubisky. And he apparently couldn't do it. Now, Matt Nagy did come out and say they both made the decision very difficult. They apparently both performed very, very well. I kind of have a question. Did they both perform very well? Did Mitch Trubisky's play just tick up? Did Foles just kind of die down? Did his play regress? Or, is it really just they're kind of the same guy? Remember, Nick Foles hasn't done anything really outside of Philadelphia. Outside of Philadelphia, Nick Foles has done nothing. Maybe you could say he hasn't had the best shot to the Rams. He didn't really have a shot there. With the Chiefs, he was a backup. Even when he went back to the Philadelphia the second time, he was still a backup, but he got to show his stuff in the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Nick Foles is, you could maybe say as bad as Trubisky. I'm not saying that Mitch Trubisky is as good as Nick Foles. I'm not trying to say that. If I had to actually take a quarterback over the other, I would take Nick Foles. Because I've seen what he can do when a system is built around him with the Eagles. I've seen what he can do. And I've seen him perform on the biggest stage of them all, the Super Bowl, and completely dominate the game. I've seen him do that. I have yet to see Mitch Trubisky do that. He had one really good year with the Bears. It was the year they went to the playoffs, and even then, it was heavily controlled by Matt Nagy. It was really, if we're gonna be honest, it was the Sean McVay effect. Sean McVay goes to Jared Goff, he looks like a starter. Matt Nagy, he goes to Trubisky, at least for one season, made him look like a starter. They do have a winning record with Trubisky, but then the second year, it just kind of fell apart. And when I say that they're kind of like the same guy, I mean, when they're clicking, they're really good, but they're completely inconsistent. Trubisky's play has never been consistent. Nick Foles' play has never been consistent. Even the year that he then had that great playoff run. Do you remember him during the regular season? There were times where the Eagles' offense just looked inept. There were times where the Eagles offense couldn't move the football really. You had low scoring game after low scoring game. It was a defensive struggle. That's what I mean when I say they might just kind of be the same guy. Now, the Bears opened the season against the Lions. You would assume that's probably going to be a cakewalk. Now, if I was a Lions fan, I would be a little bit annoyed by the fact that they named the starter already. If I'm the Bears and my choice is between Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles, and apparently Nick Foles can't beat him out, which doesn't sound good. Let me be very, very clear. Either Nick Foles has regressed, or Mitch Trubisky's play has ticked up, or you're telling me they're basically the same guy. I have no idea. But if I'm in that situation, I would wait as long as I can to name the starter. Why would you give the Lions more time to prepare for your quarterback? Why? I don't quite understand that. I think that's an area where the Bears, they kind of fumbled it. I'm guessing Matt Nagy has some insane game plan, and he just feels like the Bears that the Lions just possibly cannot beat the Bears. That there's just no way in hell. So I'm interested to see how that first game goes. But I want to go back to this whole quarterback situation they're in. You have the draft. They draft Mitch Trubisky over not only Patrick Mahomes, which again, let's go ahead and be honest, we had no idea that Patrick Mahomes was going to be who he is. We had no idea. We knew he had an arm, and that was about it. There was a problem when it came to the offense that he ran. People didn't know if it translated to the NFL. They didn't know if him playing in that offense, if his skill set would transfer, but obviously it has. But there was a guy in that draft who we all knew on the biggest stage could play. He was the same kind of dude on the biggest stage, and during the regular season, and that was Deshaun Watson. We saw what he did to Nick Saban twice in 2 national championship games. He was amazing. His whole college resume screamed he should have been the first quarterback taken. If not the first overall pick, he should have at least been the first quarterback taken. I've talked about this before. If Bill O'Brien can get this out of Deshaun Watson, and people think that he is one of the worst, if not he is the worst head coach in the NFL, can you imagine what Matt Nagy could have gotten out of Deshaun Watson? Oh my God. And the Texans just gave Deshaun Watson a massive extension. 4 years, $160 million. The Bears declined Mitch Trubisky's 5th-year option. They aren't going to pick it up. Basically, this is his contract year. He needs to either ball or at least show improvement for the Bears to even consider bringing him back. You fumbled that quarterback situation. A situation that should have never even been up for debate. Again, at least in my mind, it should not have even been up for debate to pick Trubisky over Deshaun Watson. But you did that. Okay, there's one mistake. And most of the time people will tell you, if you make a mistake with a draft pick, just own it, and either you release the player or they're a backup. You need to own it. Don't try and force a player to be good. If they're not good, they're not good. If they need more time to prepare, they need more time to prepare. So you fumble that whole issue. And then when it comes to this offseason, you have the possibility of signing Jameis Winston, who's coming off of 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and yes, 30 interceptions. But Mitch Trubisky hasn't even sniffed 5,000 yards, He hasn't thrown over 30 touchdowns in a season. I don't know if he'll ever even come close to sniffing it. You could have had Jameis Winston for $1 million. You could have had Jameis Winston. But no. You wanted Nick Foles' contract. Okay. For a 4th round pick, by the way, you had to actually give up a pick to get Nick Foles. Okay. You could have probably had Andy Dalton. Maybe for even the same draft pick. Andy Dalton, by all accounts, I would say, is better than Nick Foles. Maybe some people could debate it. I might be open to listening to it. Maybe you could say that Nick Foles' his peak play is better than Andy Dalton, but Andy Dalton I think has been way more consistent. You could have had him for free. The Bengals cut him. You could have had Andy Dalton for free. You didn't wait. You got impatient. You wanted to get a quarterback on your team as quick as possible. You went for Nick Foles. You could have had Cam Newton for, again, free. Didn't have to give up anything for him. And even if you did, the Panthers, they were going to cut him. If the Panthers, and I think it's kind of that thing, they did Cam Newton really dirty. They said Cam Newton was going to be their guy. Kind of like, the Bears said with Mitch Trubisky. The difference is the Bears didn't then cut Mitch. The Panthers did then cut Cam Newton. And now Cam Newton's in New England. And not only is he a team captain, he is the starting quarterback of the team. Cam Newton is better than both Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. Can you imagine Cam Newton with Matt Nagy calling the plays? With that defense? With the weapons they have on offense? Can you imagine what they could have done? I might take the Bears to maybe not win the division, but at least be a playoff team. This season, I don't see it. I do not think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they might once again be around 500, and they're going to be looking for a quarterback. Maybe they'll be in free agency. Maybe they'll try and trade up in the draft. I have no idea. Maybe they can go and try and get Josh Rosen. And try that reclamation project. I've never seen a franchise fumble a quarterback situation like this. And I think there's another team that's close to it. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers here real soon are going to be in some quarterback hell, depending on what happens with Ben Roethlisberger and his health, and the fact that they never seem to be bad enough to actually get a high 1st round pick. So what are they going to do once Ben retires, right? Are they going to go and get a guy in free agency? Are they going to try and trade for a dude? Are they going to trade up in the draft? I have absolutely no idea what their plan is. But when it comes to the Bears, and what has been going on with Mitch Trubisky, look, they tried. They tried to make it work. And I've talked about this before, I do not believe starting quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks, second-year guys, I don't believe that young quarterbacks get the fairest of shakes in the NFL. But part of it is because you have these guys like Russell Wilson, like Deshaun Watson, like Patrick Mahomes, like Carson Wentz, like Dak Prescott. You get some of these guys who in their rookie year, second year, third year are MVP caliber players, are complete stars, Pro Bowl players, all pros. You get these young quarterbacks who are outstanding and can instantly play, and you get these teams who right off the bat can immediately go start signing big name free agents. They can spend money however they want to. They can re-sign everybody because they have a shot to win a Super Bowl. And that's what every team is clamoring for. The Bears, for whatever reason, they looked at Mitch Trubisky and they said, this could be our guy. He has the upside. Can we stop drafting guys just for upside? I don't know. Is that a thing? Like, is that wrong to say? I feel like when you're drafting a guy for the potential upside of them, I feel like there's some problem with that. I don't know. It seems like when teams start drafting guys because of the potential upside, it feels like you're leaving a lot of room there to bust. Trubisky, drafting him for the upside. Jordan Love, the Packers, they drafted him for the potential upside. So far in practice, he's not looking good. Maybe sometimes just what you see is what you see, and I get it. Sometimes guys need coaching, they can be brought up, you can train them to do some different things, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. It's just a thought. Maybe drafting guys simply for the fact that they could potentially be something special, they could potentially be some project that can turn out great. Maybe that's not the best method to draft guys with. I don't know. When you have the project in Mitch Trubisky compared to the product that is Deshaun Watson, who are you picking? And obviously, Deshaun Watson, he is better now than he was in college. Obviously, he's been playing in the NFL now for a few seasons. He's better now than he was in college. But we could see how outstanding he was in college. And we knew that you could say his upside was possible league MVP one day, a possible Super Bowl champion, a great starting quarterback who was a great dual threat. And so far, what he has been is a great dual threat, a playoff quarterback, won some playoff games, at times struggles with accuracy, but all in all, he is a playmaker. He is basically what we have expected him to be. With Trubisky, he was a guy who played one season, and it was good, but he wasn't anything super special, at least not in my eyes. And the Bears went ahead and they took him first in that draft. And then they have a chance. They have a chance with Cam Newton and Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston and all these options out there. They had a perfect chance to put legitimate pressure on Trubisky, because Jameis Winston would have given him pressure. Cam Newton would have probably beaten him for the job. You had a legitimate shot to give him pressure. Marcus Mariota, he was out there. The Raiders, they went ahead and they grabbed him. They had a shot. And it just, they fumbled that too. I think the Bears are going to come to regret it. I don't know if they're going to be bad enough this season to have a high draft pick, to maybe even go and get another quarterback. This coming off season, I'm curious to see what are the Bears going to do. Are they going to re-sign Trubisky on a 1-year deal? Will they maybe go ahead with Foles? What are they going to do? Are they going to target Dalton? Are they going to target just a veteran, Cam Newton, if he has a good season? I don't know. But I'm really questioning what the Bears are doing right now. I think they haven't handled any of this correctly. I just feel like they've handled this all terribly. If Mitch Trubisky gives them their best shot to win, I don't think that says great things about Foles at all. I don't think that says anything good about Foles. Remember, you can take it either way. Either Foles has gotten worse, Mitch has gotten better, or they're basically the same guy. That's just kind of how I see it. Anyways, coming up next, Leonard Fournette was cut by the Jags, signed by Tampa Bay. We're going to get into that coming up next.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Bryson Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Bryce. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment, and all kinds of crazy prop bets and futures. So call today at 1-800-MyBetUS. That's 1-800-MyBetUS, and they will walk you through getting started. Nobody in the industry gives better bonuses or bigger bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. We bet at BetUS, and so should you. So join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com, or call 1-800-MyBetUS, mention GSMC, and get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Bears and Mitch Trubisky. Look, the moral of the story with the Bears, when you make a mistake, don't double down on the mistake, don't triple down on the mistake, and then when you actually make an attempt to fix the mistake, properly take the time, use the resources that you can. No, don't overpay. Use the right amount of resources you can, if any, and fix the mistake. You fumbled Trubisky, you then fumbled Nick Foles. Cam Newton's out there now starting for the Patriots. People out there think that the Cowboys probably have the best backup quarterback in the NFL with Andy Dalton. Jameis Winston is now backing up Drew Brees for $1 million. Yeah. What a mistake. Can you imagine what Jameis Winston, I talked about Cam Newton, can you imagine what Jameis Winston would have done with Matt Nagy now that he can actually see? Oh, Jesus. The league, if he's throwing 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns when he had bad eyes, oh my God. He's about to go for 7,000 and 50 touchdowns. I cannot wait to see Jameis Winston next year or whenever it is he gets a chance to be a starter again. But anyways, so speaking of outcasted players and teams making mistakes, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I've talked about them quite a bit. They are in tanking mode. They are now tanking for Trevor Lawrence. And I've talked about in my last podcast how I don't think it's going to work out when a franchise is bad, when they have a history of being inept and awful. It's not like one player is going to fix that. One of the reasons why it is that people think Joe Burrow is going to struggle in the Bengals because the Bengals are the Bengals. Why Baker Mayfield struggles with the Browns is because the Browns are the Browns, and so on and so forth. Well, one mistake that the Jacksonville Jaguars made was when they drafted Leonard Fournette 4th overall. Now, a lot of people are trying to debate, when is it that you should actually take a running back? And I would say the consensus opinion is you wait until the 3rd round, the 4th round, hell, you can even get a guy in the 5th round. You could wait until a guy is undrafted. And I named off all the running backs that were taken after Leonard Fournette in his draft. Christian McCaffrey was taken after him. Alvin Kamara was taken after him. Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Marlon Mack. There were multiple running backs in that draft who are actually either still with their team. Kareem Hunt, I think he was even in that draft class. There are a lot of these running backs. Not only do they have higher grades than Leonard Fournette for their overall careers, a lot of these guys are at least with the same team still. And they were all taken ahead. Leonard Fournette was a top 5 pick, and he couldn't make it into the last year of his deal. That tells you everything you need to know. Christian McCaffrey became the highest paid running back with the Panthers. He was taken 8th. Chris Carson, I don't know if he's going to get a contract extension from Seattle, just because I don't know if they're going to have the money, if I'm being completely honest. I just don't know if they're going to have the money to re-sign Chris Carson. I'm not sure if I also want them to sign him to some record-setting deal, but nonetheless, Chris Carson is the feature back in Seattle. Kamara, the feature back in New Orleans, and he is going to get a big contract extension. Austin Eckler, he got a big extension from the Chargers. He was undrafted. It has been proven you can kind of get a running back anywhere. With Leonard Fournette, they took him 4th overall. They wanted to be the anchor of their run game, and it just really didn't work out. Now, Leonard Fournette, he struggled with some injuries in his career. He's never played a full season. Last year was the most games he's played, which was 15. The year before that, it was 8. The year before that was 13. If you look at this last year, 265 carries. That was the 2nd highest of his career, but for his career high in yards, 1,100. Averaged 4.5 yards a carry, had 3 rushing touchdowns, so not many rushing touchdowns, especially when you look at his rookie year. His rookie year, he had 9. And then his touchdowns have gone down every single year. His catches, however, and his receiving yards went up. He had 76 catches for 522 yards, averaged 6.9 yards a carry. That was actually down compared to what he had his previous 2 seasons. Leonard Fournette, he's just more of an old school back. And while he did show an ability, at least last year, to catch the ball, he's not running routes like Le'Veon Bell. He doesn't run routes like Alvin Kamara, not like Saquon Barkley. That's not how he runs his routes. A lot of his stuff is really check downs, screen passes, stuff like that. So even though he had all the catches, and at least I guess he showed that he does have soft enough hands to catch, I think the next step in his game would be, can he start running routes? Can he learn the route tree? But he goes ahead and he signs with Tampa Bay. And a lot of people just kind of look at it as the rich are getting richer. I think I saw a tweet, someone said it's like the Golden State Bucks. You got Brady, you got Gronk, you have Mike Evans there already, Chris Godwin, there's Cameron Brate, there's OJ Howard, who I'm still not very high on, but a lot of people are high on him if he can put it together. And then you look, they had LaShawn McCoy that they went ahead and signed in the offseason. They still had Ronald Jones. And now you're just adding another guy to the mix in Leonard Fournette. Now, Bruce Arians did say that Ronald Jones is still going to be their guy. He's still going to be their starter. I don't know if I believe that necessarily. But at the same time, Ronald Jones kind of does everything Leonard Fournette does. Now, while I don't think Ronald Jones has ever quite put up the numbers that Leonard Fournette has, maybe because Ronald Jones hasn't really seemed to be just the feature back. He seems to always kind of split times. There are times where he kind of gets put in the doghouse because there are games where he's just not very, very consistent. I think he was kind of a higher grade prospect when it came into the draft than he has been in the NFL. He's just kind of been another NFL running back. He's nothing special. I think every single year he's kind of a candidate to possibly get cut from the team. But let's just say he is going to be the starter, and he's going to be the starter going into the season and moving forward. I think that would mean LaShawn McCoy, if anything, is like your third down back. Ronald Jones hasn't necessarily shown the ability to be a true receiving back the way that a guy like Kamara or McCaffrey or even LaShawn McCoy, especially in his younger years, have shown that he can be. So Leonard Fournette, where does he fit in? Maybe he's going to be splitting times with Ronald Jones. Maybe eventually Ronald Jones gets put in the doghouse and Leonard Fournette comes in. I remember I did see a quote from somebody on the Bucs staff. I don't remember if it was Arians or not. But somebody said that they brought in Leonard Fournette because of his ability as a pass blocker. His ability to pick up the blitz. His ability to be an extra blocker for the quarterback. It's kind of funny. Pro Football Focus, they went ahead and kind of said, oh, really? Okay, well, let's see if you know what you're talking about. So, Pro Football Focus took all eligible running backs over the past 2 years, which apparently there are 46 eligible running backs, and they took their pass blocking grades. Here are the top three: Jamal Williams, who could be on the way out of Green Bay; Jordan Howard, who I actually compared. He is a Leonard Fournette-like running back. Doesn't really catch the ball, more of a true just runner power back. And then number 3 is David Montgomery. Number 43 is Leonard Fournette with a grade of 39.9. Remember, this is out of 46. So he ranks 43rd out of 46 possible running backs when it came to his pass blocking grades. So I'm not entirely sure what it is that the Bucs are seeing. I don't know if this is a case of, you know what, they have the money. They have this stacked roster. Leonard Fournette is a big name because people at least know of his name. So maybe let's go ahead and let's grab him. Who knows? The rich, they just keep getting richer. Who knows? Maybe we can turn him into something. I don't know exactly what it is, but at least on paper, it doesn't really look like he's going to add in that category. Did you know Leonard Fournette has the lowest Pro Football Focus rushing grade of any 1,000-yard rusher in both of his 1,000-yard rushing seasons? He's been in the league now 3 years. He's had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons. His rookie year, 2017, he had a 62.2, and in 2019, 65.2. He is not a very efficient runner. And I'm not saying that that's all Leonard Fournette's fault. In Jacksonville, all he did was face 8-man boxes. Teams geared up to stop him because his quarterbacks were Blake Bortles and Gardner Minshew. And when it comes to Bortles, defenses knew that they had a better chance of beating the Jags if they made Blake Bortles throw. And when it came to Minshew, he was a rookie, and teams are usually always going to try and make the rookie beat you over the other players. So I'm not saying it's all Leonard Fournette's fault. When you're facing 8-man boxes every single snap and you are a high collision back, I think actually since he entered the league, Leonard Fournette ranks like 3rd in the NFL in terms of yards after contact. So, I mean, he's a very physical back. I'm not going to blame it on him. But sometimes you get pegged with what you get pegged. Your first few years in the league, sometimes they can really dictate the narrative around you. I've talked about this with Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen, so far, has been pegged as a bust, that he just can't seem to play. The Cardinals gave up on him. Obviously the Dolphins went ahead and cut him. I am waiting to see if a team gives Rosen a chance to be a starter, because I still have no idea what he is. He had 1 year in Arizona, a terrible team. He then went to Miami, a terrible team, played a few games, they benched him again, and now he's cut. I'm still waiting to see what happens there. But at least with Leonard Fournette, so far, he's a volume carry back, and he's not the Adrian Peterson, Ezekiel Elliott kind of volume. Adrian Peterson, he was the kind of back where he's going to give you like 4 yards, 2 yards, -1, 20 yards, then he might give you 10, and then he, goes 50 and hits his head on the goalpost. That was the kind of volume back Adrian Peterson was. Ezekiel Elliott is another volume carry back. He might give you 4 yards, and then 2 yards, 3 yards, and then he goes 20, and then he goes maybe, -1, and then he goes like 30. Those are the kind of backs that those guys are. It's the same thing with Saquon Barkley, another volume carry style back. And they've all been graded much higher than Leonard Fournette. But even then, I don't think that Leonard Fournette makes a difference in whether the Bucs are going to win a title. I think all it makes a difference in is that the Buccaneers are going to have more depth at running back. I think that's all that means. And I don't even know how much playtime he's going to have. Maybe Ronald Jones gets hurt. Again, maybe he gets put in the doghouse. I have no clue. Maybe they just split times with him to keep a defense honest, a change of pace kind of back. I don't really know. I still think that this team is going to be based around Brady, and that's why I think Leonard Fournette could potentially have a really, really good season. Because defenses are gearing up to stop Brady, Evans, Godwin, Gronk, Bray. That's who they're gearing up to stop. They're not gearing up to stop Ronald Jones. They're not gearing up to stop LaShawn McCoy. They're not even gearing up to stop Leonard Fournette. That is not their concern. Their concern is Brady dinking and dunking, hitting a deep ball with Mike Evans with Chris Godwin, throwing a jump ball up to Gronkowski, who's had a year to rest and recover and is rejuvenated and ready to play again, and he's ready to have fun again in a new system, in a new place, away from Bill Belichick. I still feel like they are going to be the focus of the offense. They're still going to be the focus of the defense's attention. Leonard Fournette, I feel like he's kind of in a situation almost like Cam Newton. He needs to, number one, show he can be healthy. Show he can make it through a full season and not get hurt. Number two, I think he needs to show another season of fitting into today's style of play. He needs to show everyone that he can be a true receiving back. Don't just catch dump-offs. Can you run a route against a linebacker? Can you run a route against a safety? Can they split you out wide sometimes? And I'm not saying that they're necessarily going to ever do that with Leonard Fournette. Brady does like to throw it to the backs a lot, so maybe it could be that thing of the stamp of approval. If Brady thinks that you were a good fit in the system and he has a lot of nice things to say about you and thinks you're working hard and you're fitting in and you're really helping the team and he actually trusts you and keeps throwing you the ball, whether it be on a screen pass or they're able to actually, match you up against a linebacker out wide, whatever it might be, then maybe a team will then go, well, all right, I guess, hey, Brady liked him. If Brady likes him, we have to go ahead and take a shot. That's the thought with Cam Newton, right? He's going to go into this season with the Patriots. If he's a good soldier and he plays really well and Bill Belichick says glowing things about him, then maybe Cam Newton will be able to parlay that into this offseason having a big deal to whatever team signs him. If I'm the Bears, I might really strongly look at getting Cam Newton. If I'm the Bills, I'd probably do the same thing. Look at Cam Newton, because, boy, I never quite understood why it is that he got such a bad rap. But in terms of the Buccaneers and with Leonard Fournette, it was a move. They signed him. I don't know. I feel like there's better players they could have attempted to grab. I feel like there's other guys they could have gone for. But this team is pretty stacked. The only area I think that this team really needs help on is the secondary. And there's not a whole lot of pieces out there to go for. If anything, it'd be Earl Thomas. Maybe Brandon Carr, because Brandon Carr showed himself to be a pretty solid, strong safety for the Ravens when he played. But other than that, I don't know. It was a move. I'm not really high on it. I think it was a move. I think he provides running back depth. But honestly, that's about it. I'm not jumping for joy for this move or anything like that. But it does, It does make me think, before we transition into the next topic, this does make me think about the running back market. And it makes me think about how the running back position is treated. The running back position is not treated well. It really isn't. They are the most underpaid players, and they go through the most punishment. On every single snap, for the most part, they get hit or tackled by somebody. For the most part. Sometimes they go out and they're just kind of in a route, just running it and just kind of to be a decoy. Sometimes they get into pass protection and they don't end up really touching anybody, or they just kind of block someone with their hands. But other than that, these guys who are getting 20, 30 carries a game, 25 carries a game, along with maybe 10 total targets, maybe 7 total targets, 5 catches, 6 catches, whatever it might be. These guys get hit like 30, 40 times a game. And their market never seems to go up. They are the most replaceable position. Melvin Gordon with the Chargers, gone. They're like, we have Eckler. You look at in Atlanta with Devontae Freeman, they said, goodbye. With the Rams, they looked at Todd Gurley, they said, goodbye. Even after they paid him, they said, no, we're good. We'll find somebody else. The Chiefs, they went ahead and they moved off of Kareem Hunt. Now, obviously, he had another issue, but they moved off of Kareem Hunt, who was a 3rd-round pick. But they said, hey, we've got guys who can fit in for you. We don't need you. You're a running back. I think there's a lot of value still in running backs. You look at a guy like McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara. I still think there's real value in drafting your running back, and at times, drafting your running back in the 1st round, high 2nd round, middle 1st round, whatever it might be. I think there's still value to it. But you do have to be careful, I think, of the kind of running back you draft, and, can you find the close proximity of them? A close proximity of them, I should say. Can you find that guy in the later rounds? Can you pay even less? Can you use that 1st round pick, that 2nd round pick on a more valuable player? I do think that is something more of these teams need to look at. And don't get me wrong, I understand when you have an ability to draft a guy like an Ezekiel Elliott, who was a superstar in college, when you have a chance to draft a guy like a Reggie Bush, who was a superstar in college, like a Christian McCaffrey, who was a Heisman finalist, was a superstar in college. When you have a chance, Leonard Fournette, superstar. When you have a chance to draft these guys, I get it. You want to draft them quick because you think they're going to be an instant hit, an instant success, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. And it seems like more often than not, you can find a guy who is just as valuable, if not more valuable, later in the later in the draft, in the later rounds, and sometimes, hell, they're even undrafted. Talk about fumbling the draft, right? The Bears, they took Trubisky. The Jags, they took Leonard Fournette over Watson and over a guy like Mahomes because they had Blake Bortles. Jesus. Ooh. Hey, Bears don't feel too bad. Bears fans don't feel too bad. You could be a Jags fan right now. That's all I gotta say. Anyways, coming up next, we're gonna get into some Jadeveon Clowney, and coming up, my final topic of the day, I'm gonna get into the top 5 losses to injury this offseason. That coming later. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about Leonard Fournette to Tampa Bay. Look, at the end of the day, Leonard Fournette to Tampa Bay is a nice move. It's cool. I think that he provides some running back depth, but I don't think that because they have Leonard Fournette, a guy who was still kind of an old school back again, while he showed he could be a pass catcher last year, I do not ever remember really seeing him run any routes against linebackers, against safeties. He's not McCaffrey, he's not Kamara, he's not Saquon Barkley, he's none of those guys. But at least he's shown maybe he can be a dump-off kind of guy. Brady likes to use the running backs, and even though that does not fit Bruce Arians' system, I think they're going to work together, so I think they could definitely use Leonard Fournette, but at the end of the day, I do not believe that this move all of a sudden makes them unbeatable, to the point where it is a lock for Tampa Bay to make the Super Bowl or anything like that, so let's not get crazy. But one team did make a move that I do think is a great move for them, and I want to... Well, I guess before we get into that, so the Titans went ahead and signed Jadeveon Clowney to a 1-year, $15 million deal. Clowney gets to go. He's going to spend a year with his former position coach and Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel was his position coach. I guess you could say probably Clowney's 2 best years of his career. So he gets to pair with him again, and he's going to probably hope that he has a good, successful season. He ends the year healthy, and then he can hit the market again because he is still, 27, 28 years old? I mean, he's still young. You would assume he's in the prime of his career. He's going to look to hit the market again. But I want to talk about this from a few different points of view. One, I want to talk about who Jadeveon Clowney is, and then I want to talk about why it is that it took him so long to actually get signed. What was the problem there? And then I want to talk about why I like this move for Tennessee. So Jadeveon Clowney, who was he? He was a star in college. He was a great player. He was an SEC player of the year. I think he was a two-time first team All-American, two-time first team All-SEC, and SEC defensive player of the year. He was outstanding. And he parlayed that into being the number 1 overall pick of the Texans. And then what did he do from that point on? Well, his rookie year, not much. He started 2 games. He played a total of 4. He had about 7 total tackles. And his season was over with an injury. And then from that point on, he has gone on to play 13, 14, 16, 15, 13 games. So he's been injury prone. But when he gets on the field and he plays at his peak level, because people have to understand, Jadeveon Clowney, he's 6'5", 255 pounds, he runs a 4.5, he's freakishly strong, he is an athlete. It makes sense as to why it is that the Texans did take him number 1 overall. There were some other players that you could maybe try to argue in hindsight should have been taken over him. But you look at just his measurables, his production in college, everything. Jadeveon Clowney was a baller. And even as he's gotten into the NFL and as he's gone on, though he has been hurt, when he's on the field healthy, he's a baller. And 2017 was the only year he played all 16 and started all 16 games. And he had a career year. 59 total tackles, 9.5 sacks. He was a dominant player. Since 2014, I think Pro Football Focus has Jadeveon Clowney as the number 1 run defender in the NFL. Since 2014, he ranks 4th in tackles for loss and tackles for no gain. Clowney is outstanding when it comes to the run. He's great when it comes to getting pressures, great when it comes to hitting the quarterback. The area, if anything you could say he's really lacking in, is his sack totals. His sack production hasn't really been there. Again, his career high is 9.5. And when you're asking for $20 million, so this kind of gets into the second point, when you're asking for $20 million, when you're asking for Khalil Mack money, for J.J. Watt money, Aaron Donald money, when you're asking for that kind of cash, the area that you need to put numbers up in is the sacks. Fair or not fair, you need to have high sack production to be able to get a contract like that. It's probably not fair because sacks aren't the end all be all. Vic Beasley, who was going to be basically his crime partner over there in Tennessee, coming off the other edge. Vic Beasley has had 1 good year. He has had 1 year of double-digit sack production, and he led the league. You know what he's done since then? Basically nothing. Atlanta declined his 5th-year option. They didn't even bother attempting to re-sign him. They kind of gave up on Vic Beasley, and he, kind of like Clowney, was a top 5 pick once upon a time. So sacks are not the end-all be-all. Do not get in love with sacks. And actually, Green Bay's linebacker coach talked about this in an interview, and I thought it was very, very interesting. He was talking about pressures versus sacks. And he said, you have to look at how they're affecting the quarterback. When they are in the game, are they affecting the quarterback with the pressures? Sacks are important, don't get me wrong. They just can't believe that's the only way to be successful because you'll have a disappointing room. And he used their player, Jadeveon Smith, as an example. Jadeveon Smith ended his first year in Green Bay with 13.5 sacks. That's more than Clowney's ever had in his career. But he also had over 100 pressures. He led the league in pressures. He had a game against Carolina in which he had 12 pressures, but no sacks. So you kind of have to ask yourself, would you sign up for that? I think most coaches would. I know that there's probably some average fans out there who, while they'd like the 13.5 sacks, they would like that part. But if he had, let's just say 9.5 sacks, Clowney's career high, but he had all the rest of that, 100 total pressures, had a bunch of quarterback hits, everything. Would fans sign up for that? There'd be those who would say, probably not. He doesn't get enough sacks. And it's a shame because, man, if you can get a player who's just consistently affecting the quarterback like that, consistently hurting the run game, consistently making the quarterback move off their spot, move their feet, not be able to stand still in the pocket, you would rather have that than a guy. See, one guy that I'm thinking of right now is like Shaq Barrett in Tampa Bay. They went ahead and franchise tagged him. He had 1 year where he had 19.5 sacks, and that is a ridiculous number. That is insane. That is an insane number. 19.5. That's one of the all-time great sack seasons by a player. Not many players were able to do that. But they gave him a franchise tag because they didn't want to tie in like $20 million to this dude for what could have been a flash-in-the-pan year. They want to see if he can do it again. It's the same thing with Beasley. Atlanta wanted to see, okay, can you lead the league in sacks again? Never even came close. And while Clowney, I don't know if he will ever come close to leading the league in sacks because he's also a linebacker, and occasionally teams do like to actually put him in coverage. I don't understand it. I think he should be rushing the passer every single down. He should be playing the run every single down. But it is what it is. But when it comes to Jadeveon Smith, he signed a 4-year, $66 million deal with Green Bay. He did not set a market. He didn't break anything. He got a really nice payday for the player that he is, and he's been very, very productive. Now, if it comes time for him to get paid again, and he's still playing this way, will he demand more? Maybe. Probably. At that point, I think his age might play into it. But for now, he's gotten a really good payday. And that's the kind of thing that I think Clowney overplayed his hand on. He was looking for $20 million a year. But he is not Khalil Mack. And he's not Aaron Donald. And he isn't J.J. Watt. And he isn't even DeMarcus Lawrence. Even though I think you can probably make an argument, he's maybe more consistent than DeMarcus Lawrence. But DeMarcus Lawrence, again, he's actually had the double-digit sack years. So that's the one area that really hurt Clowney. And while I don't think Clowney is going to have a double-digit sack year in Tennessee, I do think he gives them their official bookend pass rusher. He's going to be the guy who's going to free up a lot for everybody else. I think, the Vic Beasley's best year, they had Dwight Freeney still there wreaking havoc. And even though Dwight Freeney, he couldn't play an entire game, he was still very good. Of course, he has his spin move that just seemed to be unblockable. And Dwight Freeney was still a very, very consistent pass rusher. He took some pressure off of Vic Beasley. I think it's kind of going to be the same thing. Vic Beasley, he's going to have a lot of one-on-one matchups. So we'll go ahead and we'll see how it all looks for him this coming year. But it is interesting. Again, when it comes to this deal with Tennessee offered them a 1-year, $15 million deal. I don't know if there's any incentives in it. The price tag that I've just seen is $15 million. The Browns offered him a 3-year deal worth about $17, $18 million a year, and he turned it down. Seattle offered him a deal that was in the range of, I believe, 16 through 18 million, something around there, and he turned it down. And the Saints were making a push for him, and he decided nope. So it kind of makes me wonder, why is it that he chose Tennessee? I have to believe that it is because Mike Vrabel's there. I have to believe it's because Vrabel's there. Other than that, I mean, I understand why he wouldn't pick Jacksonville. But when I think about a team like the Saints that really, really want to get another edge rusher to support Cam Jordan. Davenport, he is good, but he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't been able to stay as healthy as they'd like him to. But Cam Jordan is there, and he's Mr. Consistent. Clowney, I feel like, I know that they maybe had some money trouble. They probably couldn't meet a 1-year price tag that Clowney would have liked, so I can maybe understand that. But like, if I had the choice to pick the Saints to go play for, have a chance to really win a ring, have a good season, I'm not going to be the only pass rushing option to block, because who are you going to double block? You're going to double block Cam Jordan? Well, that means Clowney's going to be free. You're going to double block Clowney? Well, that means Jordan's going to get one-on-one. So I think that was interesting that he didn't pick the Saints. When it comes to the Browns, I can only imagine he didn't pick the Browns because they're the Browns. Because other than that, he's going to be there with Myles Garrett. Whew. Talk about a pass rushing duo. Those two freak athletes coming off the edges. Oh my God. There's people who think that Myles Garrett's going to be Defensive Player of the Year this year. Last year, before Myles Garrett got suspended, I think, what was he? He was like number 2 or something like that in sacks. He was dominant. Myles Garrett has been everything the Browns wanted to. Maybe his I guess you could say his antics on the field at times aren't what you necessarily like. He does get quite a few unnecessary roughness penalties, but maybe you sign up for it because of the caliber pass rusher he is. But he turned down the Browns, and then when it comes to Seattle, a team that consistently wins, since they drafted Russell Wilson in 2012, they have consistently won at least 10 games a year, if not more, every single year. They've only won under 10 one time. Clowney decided, nope. He wasn't even going to be willing to take a 1-year deal from Seattle. And I don't know if Seattle necessarily offered him. Let me be very clear about that. I would just imagine that is a price tag that Seattle would sign up for, because at the moment, their pass rush is going to come from probably Jamal Adams. If I'm being complete, and I'm totally kidding, because I already know where Jamal Adams is going to be on that defense. He's probably going to be the in-the-box safety. Their pass rush is terrible. And their pass rush even last year wasn't really good outside of Jadeveon Clowney when he could actually play, when he was actually healthy enough to be on the field. It's interesting to me. What it says to me is that Clowney right now is really thinking about his financial future. I don't know what it is. I mean, he was a number 1 overall pick, and then he got a franchise tag. Those two contracts themselves, having the rookie contract and then obviously the 1-year contract, are 2 big paydays in themselves. And I don't mean the pocket watch, don't get me wrong. I do not mean the pocket watch. I'm not trying to say he has money issues, nothing like that. I'm not saying that he's made so much that he should take a discount. I am not saying any of that. But what I am saying is it makes me wonder exactly what this move is. And I have to believe that this move is a financial future kind of move. That he's looking to pair back up with Mike Vrabel. Again, had his best 2 years under Mike Vrabel of his career. Had his big 9.5 sack year. That was the 1 year that he played all 16 games and everything. I would assume he's looking to be able to have another season like that, probably better. Because I can't say he's going to Tennessee to win. What is Tennessee going to win? Tennessee, if anything, maybe out of the AFC, they're the 5th best team. Because, I mean, you're not going to take them over the Chiefs. You're not going to take them over the Ravens, despite what they did last year. I don't think anybody's going to take them over the Ravens. Would you take them over the Texans? I don't really think so. Would you take them over, the Steelers or the Browns? Would you take them over those teams? Maybe by the way that they play, but as a roster, would you take them? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I can say, and this is a team that over the last few years has perpetually been 9-7. So I mean, at least, over the last few years, they're consistently at least having a winning record. They're consistently a game over 500, but I can't say it's a winning move. I'd have to believe that this is simply Clowney looking to go and pair back up with his old position coach, have a good year, end the year healthy, and then cash in on a big payday. If he could parlay this year into a double-digit sack season and actually have his best statistical year, I would assume he might get that. He might be able to get it. It might not be a super long-term deal, but he could probably get, 4 years at $20 million a year, maybe. I like the move for Tennessee, though. I do. Because when they got rid of Jarrell Casey, I felt like that was really kind of the blow to their defense. Where was their pass rush going to be? Jarrell Casey, still at his age. And what is he? I think he's like, maybe 30 years old? He's still a really good player. I thought it was kind of weird that they just kind of up and traded him away for basically nothing. I think they got a 4th or a 5th round pick for him. I thought they could have at least done better than that. But you have Beasley there. You have Clowney there. Beasley's kind of the reclamation project. You see if he can really become something. And with Clowney, you know who he is when he's healthy. Mike Vrabel knows who he is when he's healthy. So we will wait and see how this all works out. It's been one strange offseason. I really believe that COVID and just with how wonky it made everything, it made some really good players wait for a very long time. Everson Griffin had to wait and wait and wait until he finally got a contract offer from the Cowboys. Clowney had to wait and wait and wait, and he waited really for his price tag. Like I said, some other teams offered him more than what Tennessee did. But no team was willing to meet that $20 million a year price tag, and I think that eventually he just kind of said to himself, okay, I need to do what's best for me, and for him, it's not winning. For him, it's his financial future, so he went to a team, paired up with his old position coach, gonna look to have a really good year, a bounce back year, you could say, stay healthy, be productive, and then he's gonna look to attempt to cash in on that $20 million a year price tag again next year, because you do not go to Tennessee to win. You go literally anywhere else, if you really want to win. Okay, not anywhere else, but there's many other options to go to. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day. We're going to get into the top 5 losses, in my opinion, to injury this offseason. That coming up next. Stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Final topic of the day. We're going to get into my top 5 injuries, my top 5 losses due to injury this offseason. Last segment we talked about the Titans signing Jadeveon Clowney. I really like the move. I think people need to not be so in love with just the raw sack numbers because those can be very, very misleading. There are guys out there who have had big sack years and then kind of go on to do nothing. There are guys who have kind of hung around the same amount of sacks every single year, whether it be like 8 or 10, maybe like 12 or 13, but they consistently get to the quarterback, they consistently put pressure, they consistently hit them, and they disrupt game plans. And that is ultimately what you want out of your defense. You want them to continuously disrupt the quarterback. So people need to not fall in love with these sack numbers, because there are guys who have led the league in sacks, and then they disappear. Vic Beasley is one of them. I think another guy, it could end up being here soon, could be Shaq Barrett. But, Denver, they did like Shaq Barrett, but he needed to go somewhere else so he could actually start. He goes to Tampa Bay, has a big first season as a full-time starter. We will see what he does this coming season with Tampa Bay actually having expectations and people now paying a lot of attention to Shaq Barrett. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and get into this. So, the offseason can be murder for teams. The offseason is where a lot of teams can really kind of make or break their year. Because not only are you signing free agents and there's the draft, there's all that stuff that goes on, but then once practices start, once OTAs, once training camps and scrimmages start, that's when injuries happen. And injuries are never a good thing. But one thing that injuries do allow some players to do is to start a bit earlier, to really show themselves, to get some snaps under their belt, to get more snaps under their belt at least, and sometimes superstars are born. Let me give you guys an example. In 2016, the Minnesota Vikings were going into their third year with Teddy Bridgewater as their starter. And during a routine practice, he was doing a standard drop back to pass, and he took a step, and his knee bent the wrong way, and Teddy Bridgewater was done for like the next 2 years. Couldn't suit up, basically had to learn how to walk again with that leg, because he completely destroyed his knee. It was very, very similar to like, it reminded people of like the RG3 injury. It reminded people almost of Jalen Smith's injury. Because Jalen Smith, remember, during his bowl game, his knee was destroyed. He had to learn basically how to walk again. It was the same thing for Teddy Bridgewater. And there were many people who thought he wouldn't be able to play again. Luckily, he was able to. But what did this do for Minnesota? This made Minnesota go into scramble mode because they did not believe in their backup. I don't even remember who their backup was at the time, but whoever it was, wasn't good. So they went ahead and they traded for Sam Bradford. In trading for Sam Bradford, obviously this year, Philadelphia drafted Carson Wentz. So they traded Bradford, and they started Carson Wentz day number 1. And that's when Wentzylvania was born. Dak Prescott. Remember how he came into the league? Remember how he busted onto the scene? Now, while it wasn't a training camp injury, and this is kind of that thing of, you can't get rid of training camp, you can't get rid of practices, you can't get rid of that stuff. So those injuries are always going to happen. They will always be there. The preseason is something that you can control. For this season, they've taken it away. And probably for good, in the long run, I would say it's good. And I'd say that the NFL should definitely look at possibly limiting the preseason. Because we have seen some preseason injuries that took guys out for the entire season. Julian Edelman tore his ACL in the preseason game, knocked out. You look at Odell Beckham, almost destroyed his knee. Took a big hit. It made him kind of a bit more ginger on that knee. And then in the season, 3 or 4 games in, that same knee buckled, broke, and he was out for the season. You look at Tony Romo. Remember what happened to Tony Romo against Seattle? Cliff Averill landed on his back. I think fractured the vertebrae, something like that. Dak Prescott was born. And Dak Prescott took that starting job, and he ran away with it. Injuries sometimes can make way for some superstars to be born. And that's always great, especially when it's a quarterback, but again, you never really wish for injury. At least I would hope. I would hope people don't wish for injury. So you look at this offseason, there have been a handful of them. The 49ers have been just snake-bitten with injuries, especially at receiver. They lost Deebo Samuels a little bit over a month ago. He is supposed to maybe be back in time for week 1, but when he broke his foot, a lot of people thought that'd be it for him, that he might not be able to come back, but it seems like he's going to, so that should be fine. But they've put 2 other receivers on IR, Tavon Austin and J.J. Nelson, I believe. So, they've just kind of been snake-bitten. You look at the Bears, they signed a cornerback. He's out for the season. The Bengals, they signed Trey Waynes. Trey Waynes is now going to be basically gone for the entire season. These kinds of things just happen. And it sucks, and it puts some teams in very unfortunate situations. Gerald McCoy of the Cowboys, he was supposed to be a big signing of theirs. Signed a really friendly deal for 3 years at $18 million total. And he ruptured his quad and they cut him. Training camp can be brutal. It really can. And you can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of practices. You can't get rid of these things. You can try and limit contact, and that's why you have some of the rules that have been. There's only so many padded practices you can have. There's only so many of this and that you can do. But the injuries are still going to happen. So when I looked at this list, what I tried to do is I tried to take players who were going to be gone for the entire season, or at least the majority of the season. So these guys who are going to miss a week or 2, or maybe the first 4 games, whatever it might be, I wasn't really going to count those guys. I'm looking at guys who are going to be missing the entire year. And some of these players who are out for the entire year were going to be big parts of their team's success. So let's go ahead and I picked 5. There's a bunch of others I could have picked, but I picked 5 because I thought they were the most serious of them all. And We're gonna go from 5 to 1, so 5 being the least impactful of all the injuries, and number 1 being the guy who I think is the biggest loss of the offseason. So at number 5, I have Grant Delpit of the Browns. He was a second round pick. He was a 2-time consensus All-American, 2-time first-team All-SEC, a Jim Thorpe Award winner. He was a great safety in college at LSU, and it seemed like he was going to be able to, he was on pace to win the starting job with Cleveland. And I put him in number 5. I put him even in the top 5 because Cleveland's defense needs help, especially in the secondary. I think their secondary as it stands right now is Denzel Ward, who is a good young corner, kind of inconsistent, is here and there, but overall a solid corner who you would assume is just improving. Greedy Williams coming into his second year, you'd see what he can turn into. And it's Andrew Sendejo and Carl Joseph, I believe, is their secondary. They need help. And Grant Delpit was a great player in college. It seemed like he was going to be a great player. The scouts and everything were really high on him, thought he could turn into a really good safety in the NFL, and he is now just flat out gone. The Browns will not even get to see him in game action. I think it's a big blow. Cleveland secondary needs all the help it can get. Their front 7 is great, at least their front 4. Their pass rush is great. Their linebacking core is kind of suspect, but when I look at their secondary, they need that pass rush to work overdrive. Because if that Cleveland pass rush isn't getting there in like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, that secondary is going to get diced up. I just do not really see enough lockdown. I don't see enough playmakers in the secondary to save this team. I really do think that their secondary could be their Achilles heel. Losing Grant Delpit was not good. That did not help them at all. So I have Grant Delpit at number 5. And number 4, I have Andre Dillard. Now, Andre Dillard, a year ago, was a first-round pick of the Eagles, and he was supposed to take over for Jason Peters once Jason Peters was retired, because basically, what it was supposed to be is they were going to transition Jason Peters out of Philadelphia. He's been a Philadelphia Eagle his whole career. It seemed like he would never go anywhere else, and this offseason, they originally, I don't think were going to sign Jason Peters. Well, another guy who's on this list I have is Brandon Brooks. Brandon Brooks got hurt. So they brought Jason Peters in to play guard because it's easier than tackle. He was still a good tackle even at his age. They figured he'd be able to fill in at right guard or left guard. Either way, it was a guard position. Andre Dillard getting hurt, their second year tackle, now moves Jason Peters back out wide. And Jason Peters was telling the Eagles, like, you're paying me guard money, I need tackle money, and I'm sure the Eagles are going to get that all fixed, but losing 2 starting offensive linemen, and especially losing your starting tackle, who you're very high on, who you took in the first round, is never good. Especially when your quarterback is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, again, he has been dinged up his whole career. Every single year it's something. He gets hit, it's a concussion, it's a knee injury, whatever it might be. He seems to get hurt. I mean, good Lord, he had a broken bone in his back. And I believe, what was it, his 3rd year? He broke a bone in his back, couldn't finish the season. You need to protect Carson Wentz all you can. And you've just lost 2 of your starting offensive linemen. One of them is an all-pro. Other dude is a young tackle who you're really high on, who you're hoping can turn into the next Jason Peters. And while I think that's asking a lot, you now have Jason Peters there, and you're going to have a hole somewhere on that offensive line. So I have Andre Dillard at number 4. And number 3, I have Tyrell Williams. Now, this isn't a name that a lot of people are very familiar with, but Tyrell Williams is an undrafted receiver once upon a time, I think back in 2015, undrafted. He's turned into a really, really good player. He's a really solid wide receiver. Not a big catch dude, but he's a big play dude. For his career, he averages 16 yards a catch. If you look at his catches over the last 4 years, he's had 69, 43, 41, 42. His yards for all those seasons, 1,000, 700, 650, 650. So even though his catches have gone down over the last few years, which was mainly because of his role in the offense, especially with the Chargers, they of course had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Tyrell Williams, if anything, was kind of the 3rd guy. Sometimes kind of seemed like the 4th guy, all depending on how they wanted to use him. but obviously his big catch year, his 69 catch year, was the year that he was kind of, I'd say, like the number one receiver. I think Keenan Allen got hurt that year early, so Tyrell Williams was getting the majority of the attention at receiver. But he's been a big play receiver, even last year. 42 catches for the Raiders, 650 so yards. I think he had maybe like 4 or 5 touchdown grabs. He's a nice piece. And that is a real big blow to this Raiders receiver core. It leaves the receiving core now with Henry Ruggs, who was an unproven receiver at the NFL level, Hunter Renfrow, who is a solid slot receiver, and there's a guy named Edwards, who has apparently really flashed for them in practice. You see what he can turn into. They obviously still have Darren Waller, but losing the guy who last year was really your top receiver, outside of Darren Waller at tight end, Tyrell Williams was your guy, never good. So I have Tyrell Williams' injury at number 3. I think he tore his labrum as well, and so he is out for the entire year. At number 2, mentioned him a bit ago, Brandon Brooks. Brandon Brooks is an All-Pro. He was Pro Football Focus's highest graded offensive lineman this past season. And even though he's a bit older, Brandon Brooks is still a very, very good player. Whether it be them calling a run play or a pass play, it doesn't matter. Pro Football Focus said he was the best offensive lineman last year. And Philadelphia lost him early in the season. And I kind of already mentioned how it started this trickle-down effect, because it caused Philadelphia to go ahead and re-sign Jason Peters to a 1-year deal to go ahead and play guard. And then they lose Andre Dillard, and now they're trying to figure out, do they keep Jason Peters at guard, or do they move him back to tackle? At the end of the day, this is important for Carson Wentz. They need to keep him upright as much as possible, because every single year, Carson Wentz has hurt something, even during his rookie year. Eventually something was sore. Eventually he was on an injury report. Every single year it is something with him. And they need to keep him upright as much as possible. And you have now lost 2 of your projected starters heading into the season. One of them is an All-Pro, was the best offensive lineman the past year. This is really going to hurt Philadelphia. And when you look at Philadelphia, whether it be at receiver or at running back, they're kinda average at both. The only area that they are above average at is tight end, because they have Ertz and Goddard. Both are very good tight ends. But you look at their receiving core, it's kinda it's okay. I've seen reports they're trying to look to trade Alshon Jeffrey because he can't stay healthy anymore. D-Jack missed basically the entire year last year, didn't even really get to play. I know they have a rookie, but I think he's even on the injury report. When it comes to their running back situation, outside of Miles Sanders, I don't know, it's a bunch of guys. And even then, Miles Sanders wasn't some world beater. He's not one of the best backs in football. He's another nice back who, can play at the NFL level. But, I guess we'll see how this all shapes out. But losing the best offensive lineman from the past season is never good for your team. Especially when your quarterback shows a history of getting hurt often. So I think that was a huge loss for the Philadelphia Eagles. I have Brandon Brooks at number 2, and at number 1, I have Derwin James. What a start to Derwin James' career. His rookie season, he plays the whole season, and he finished as an All-Pro. Not just a Pro Bowler, they voted him an All-Pro, meaning for that season, he was the best safety. And he was taken in the middle of the first round. And man, did he hit. He instantly became a thumper in that Chargers secondary. He was instantly, maybe after Casey Hayward, was the best the best player in the secondary. Maybe overall on the defense, he's number 2 or number 3, because Bosa's probably number 1. Hayward's probably the most consistent corner, so you can maybe put him in number 2. But then after that, it's probably Derwin James. He's going into his 3rd year, and he has been hurt every year outside of his rookie year. His second season, he started it, missing the majority of the year. This year, he's going to miss the entire season. And I think that is a major blow to this Chargers team and to their secondary. People looked at their secondary heading into the season and they said, who are you going to throw it to? If you throw it to your top receiver, Hayward's there. If you throw it to the second receiver, that's probably where Desmond King is. If you throw it to the third receiver, that's where Chris Harris Jr. is. And if you throw it to the tight end, that's where Derwin James is. People looked all over the place and said, where are you going to throw it? Well, Derwin James being out now does take away a safety that can cover. Because he was their best safety. Off the top of my head, I don't remember who their other safety is. But I at least know they still have 3 really good corners. All of them, maybe at this point in time, are more, I don't know, Chris Harris Jr. has always been more of a slot corner, and it's been the same thing kind of with Desmond King. Hayward's really their only outside corner, if anything. But I still think that they have a good secondary. I still think they have a good defense. But my whole notion of why I thought the Chargers could be really, really successful is because Taylor is a low turnover guy. He's a low big play guy. He doesn't really push the ball down the field, but I thought he could control the game, score enough points, and the defense will be able to shut out teams. The defense will be able to hold teams to 20 points, 25 points, or under. Them losing Derwin James, I do think that now means teams are going to put up a bit more points on them. The pass rush is still good. They still have Ingram. They still got Bosa. They still have those 3 corners. But you look now at safety, there is kind of a hole. And I think somebody asked Anthony Lynn if they thought about maybe going after Earl Thomas, because Earl Thomas, you would assume they could probably just play Earl Thomas the way that, the way that he plays in Seattle, cause what is it? That's Gus Bradley. I think Gus Bradley is still the defensive coordinator of the Chargers. That's Gus Bradley's defense. Gus Bradley came from the Pete Carroll tree. Gus Bradley plays the same kind of way. I think he does do a bit more than Pete, but overall the same kind of way. So if they were to sign Earl Thomas, he'd be very familiar with the system. But Anthony Lynn just kind of came out and he said, y'all keep telling me we have the best secondary in the league. I don't think we should need Earl Thomas. And while I think it was kind of a joke, I do believe that they're going to value their team chemistry over signing Earl Thomas. Eric Reed is still out there, so maybe they go ahead and grab him. I know that it seems like safety is a bit more of a replaceable position. Having a good safety is great and all, but you can find some good safeties all over the draft. You look at the Jets, when they traded Jamal Adams, they still had Marcus May. Marcus May, I think, was a 3rd-round pick of theirs. So you can find safeties in some different areas of the draft and sometimes in free agency. Eric Reed, they grabbed him out of free agency in Carolina, was a really good safety for them. So I am interested to see how this does play out for the Chargers, but I do have Derwin James as the biggest loss, this offseason. Really, really unfortunate. Sometimes you have these really talented players that just can't stay healthy. Jadeveon Clowney for a bit, really talented player, couldn't really stay healthy. Hunter Henry, another player for the Chargers, really great tight end, can't really stay healthy, and now it seems to be Derwin James. Something about the Chargers, man. There is just something about the Chargers and injury luck. It just doesn't go their way. I think even Bosa last season, what'd he do? He missed the first 10 games, or maybe not this past season, but the season beforehand. He started the year, missed the first 10 games of the year. This is just... this is kind of the Chargers. This is the curse of being a Charger. So I really do hope the best for Derwin James, but to reiterate my top 5 lists, I have number 5, Grandel Pitt, then Andre Dillard, Tyrell Williams, Brandon Brooks, and at number 1, I have Derwin James. Only a couple days until the start of the NFL season. I cannot wait to actually be able to talk some games with you guys and actually talk about the product, talk about what I thought. I'm already trying to figure out what it is I'm going to talk about for that next show after the game, because I think there's going to be so much. My brain's going to be so overloaded. I'm going to have so much I want to say in only, an hour and a half time span or so. So I'm really looking forward to it, though. I think it's going to look good. I think it's going to sound good. I think the product's going to be really, really fun to watch. And I just can't wait to see Watson and Mahomes go at it again. A rematch from the conference... Not the conference, from the divisional championship game. I think it is going to be just awesome. But anyways, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.